Segregation of environments. You're probably wondering, why is this topic so interesting for cybersecurity? Isn't it more an availability topic? Yeah. But there are different angles to this. Maybe first to clarify, what does it mean, segregation of environments? So obviously you have a production environment that is your system, and I'm deliberately saying system, not application, because most of the time it's multiple components, modules, bits and pieces of applications running on a different set of servers in the cloud room, hybrid, yeah, maybe mixed with some APIs towards a software as a service application. So that is your production. This is what you're using on a daily basis. You have hopefully a good asset management on this, that you know how is it designed, how is it set up, what does it consume, and how does it run. Then there's a lot of other sub environments that you may use. Pre-production or integration is something that is more interesting for a system operator, because that is where they practice deployments, they practice certain technical measures, maintenance measures, to make sure that it doesn't harm the production, and in case there's an issue, that they can simulate that. It's basically like a release management rehearsal environment. So you can try out and see what can go wrong, how long does it take, what I didn't consider, maybe some setting files, configurations that have to be done next to this. So it's like a practicing to do the release, even though release notes are usually helpful, but you gotta practice it to get it right, and you can save downtime if you rehearse it before. Other environments like UAT, it's the major testing environments for the user acceptance. Most of the time, systems have more than one UAT because different departments testing at different pace. There's also some incremental fixing and patching going on at the same time, especially when you have big releases coming. You don't want to wait for everyone to finish, and then you don't want everyone to start again and then outline a lot of findings and cannot work in parallel. So therefore, multiple UATs is very common. Just have to make sure they're all synchronized and what kind of data sets you're using for testing. QA test is more something for, yeah, after the development has been finished. I mean, here the development environment is also listed. That's where actually the coding happens, yeah, and is deployed in the first place to see how it runs, how it works. And QA test is more like a technical check, because you want to avoid that you release something into UAT, and then in the first 1 hour, the people come back and say the system is shutting down and there's a major issue which has nothing to do with the functionality. So you have a lot of UAT testers lining up for work today, and suddenly your environment has some critical functions that are not performing, and you could have filtered it out in a normal technical maintenance QA test, where you just run the system, put some load on it, have some simplified test cases just to save the effort of preparing everything, and then no one can start. And staging environments usually are used for migration projects, where you prepare something for interconnective data migration, or even implementing some other function. So you need to stage something before you do the actual release. Yeah? And there might be even more different types of environments with different names. I usually even recommend don't give them these names, even in your technical environments. Just give them some funny names, so that even when someone gets hold of an application documentation, they don't really know, is that your production or that your production? Is it a test? Is this? But anyway, that's a different type of anxiety here. Yeah, so practicing good cyber hygiene on these environments is important, because obviously you don't want any other system than the production having the production data on it. Well, it doesn't mean that you can't use it for testing to a certain extent, because obviously some functionality, it's hard for the users to generate a fake test data set and use that to verify the case. Yeah? So obviously, in some cases, you may take production data, run it through a data cleansing tool, and remove all the personal information and mask it and scramble it, so that you at least can use the skeleton of the data so that you can line up some of your figures and see how good the calculations are. Because especially for financial system, it is pretty tough to create a good comprehensive test data set that you can use and then also later verify against it and say, yes, that's exactly the number I was supposed to see. Sometimes it's easier to work with the real data because the users know the real results from these analysis and they can compare faster. So what needs to be done in this environment in terms of cyber hygiene? Again, remove data and use scrambled data. Remove any development tools and utilities that may help the attacker to get into the environment and bypass your actual authentication and authorization. There's a way of using CI/CD, so the development pipeline, so-called, integration development pipeline, where you can automate stuff so you don't even have to enter the environment yourself, or you don't have to give users access to it. You just have the pipeline with lots of approvals, so it's actually the tool that does the work in the environment. So you don't necessarily have to give up any particular user who could try something else. And the tool only does what it's supposed to do. It deploys a piece of application, it deploys a data fix into the database, but it doesn't allow you anything else done that could compromise the security of this. So again, practice strict access control. Also on the deployment pipeline, let's say ideally use tools. And you have to have a clean release management, because the biggest problem usually happen when you have to roll back in different environments. And so that means that the release didn't go through well. You have to go and clean it up. And this is where people usually drop all the security concerns, because you have an operational issue. Everyone tries to come and help, and access is granted. Excessive access is granted. A lot of privileged users are involved, and that is not a good thing for these environments. And the more you have, I mean, it's a two-way road. You can say, the more environments I have, the more I can refine, and I can really stay away from production, and I can do all these things. But you have to patch, update, upgrade, and find a good mechanism how to automate this whole management of these environments. If you have only a small number of environments, let's say for non-critical applications where you're not so concerned that the downtime is affected or something like that, then you have less effort, of course, in terms of maintenance and keeping them lined up. But you have not so much room to maneuver in case you have to do a lot of things at the same time. And what we always recommend doing same things at the same time is the users are testing functionality, the technical maintenance staff is trying out already the first upgrade mechanisms there, and still the security tester has to do security tests. So if you don't want any overlaps and interference, because if something happens, you can't tell who was doing what, as long as you don't have a comprehensive logging monitoring, which is also again an effort and work. So sometimes it's to keep the environment separated from each other or segregated. That allows you to narrow down the issue and say the user hasn't touched it, so it must have been the administrator who did something here. So other recommendations on cyber hygiene: make these environments as close as possible in terms of configuration, so you don't have any surprises later. Especially pre-production or integration must be close to production in terms of setup, config, availability, and try not to share infrastructure for it. I mean, yes, for the UAT environments you can spin them up separately in a different cloud room, but don't mix it with production just because of cost saving. It will come back later with a bigger bill if you try to mix and match just for the sake of sharing, and you will have more repercussions from this. And recovering from this will take longer time because you have to dissect and not touch the production.